Last week, if you missed the show, here's a little reel.
And there's a lot of people still out there picking low-hanging fruit, and that's just because, man, you know, their feelings or the emotional fulfillment that they desire is validated from the external world. And this can be for you brothers and sisters that sometimes get lonely in company. It's values. Once you've done the cleanup and you've started to honor your boundaries and they go up, then you go back and start identifying and revisiting these values. If you've been disconnected from other people and feeling lonely in their company, then that's just not an alignment to your values. So once we're able to identify those values, you won't even need to go out and look for these particular relationships. They attract to who you are now. Otherwise, my brothers and sisters, you will keep attracting the lessons that you need or that you haven't learned.
We got one more here.
Is this healthy, what I'm doing, what I'm going through? But the honest thing was, I was feeling these things, but I didn't know why I was feeling them. I didn't know how I should be feeling them. And then even further, I didn't know how to deal with them. So one of the good things that I learned through the years, it's these cosmic forces within our nature that causes us to feel and have these emotions and moments of uncontrollable emotions. That's the only way I can kind of describe it, where you're so distraught, whatever it is that you're feeling, that you're not in control anymore. And so that feeling of not in control of yourself, in that emotional state, in that hijacking of your emotions, I started to question whether that was healthy. And that's when I started to really delve into trying to understand my reactions to certain things.
Welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Welcome back to the studio. I'm excited to introduce my co-host this evening. Well, my name is Jay. My first on the top shelf with me, we have Evislav Heath, the man of the land. He calls Australia home. Welcome back, Ev.
As always, brothers and sisters on the other side of the pond, thank you for having me. Looking forward to diving in deep.
And we have a special guest this evening, Daz, joining us from the Mesa, Phoenix area, from Arizona. Welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk Live, Daz.
Yes, thank you. It's good to be back. It's my third round, so really enjoying the sessions that we have, and looking forward to having this one as well.
And of course, we have Danny Morley joining us from San Diego. This is Danny's second time. He was invited back because I tell you what, the first time he showed up, he dropped some truth bombs, and I just fell in love with you, Danny. And you made it easy for me to invite you back. So welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk Live. And also, Danny just celebrated a birthday. It'll be a week ago tomorrow, I believe. I'm not going to disclose his age. It's not my business to do that. But it is a happy birthday, Danny. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And I gotta tell you, I love listening to the intro. Just bringing that in, the beat really gets me up. So I'm really excited to be here, and let's get into some juicy topics, eh?
Beautiful. Well, before we do go there, a couple of things. First and foremost, Jeff Pisano is off this evening. He will be back next week. He's in the middle of a massive festival in Nashville, promoting his book and doing what he does best. And Josh Richard, we hoped he would be back tonight. He wrapped up Shark Tank just a couple of 24 hours ago, but he's kind of feeling a little low energy. But you never know. He may surprise us at the end of the show. The invite's been put out there for him just to jump in and say hi. But in the meantime, tonight's episode is 171, and it's all about a must to trust. Which part of self should I know? And do you trust yourself? And so, Ev, being that you're on a top shelf, what do you think about kicking us off, getting us hot, lighting us up, and get this show going tonight?
That is a must, Mr. Off the Man. Looking forward to diving in deep, my brothers and sisters. And as always, here on the other side of the pond, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Without you guys supporting us on at Real Men Real Talk Live, like I always say, we're just a few brothers sitting around having a bit of a chat or conversation. So we'd appreciate if you can share it out into your community and be able to spread these important topics and messages that are still here in the collective for not only our healing, but our way going forward. So tonight we're talking about a must to trust. Coming in with that self-trust is always important and really sits at the top of the totem pole in my set of values when I identify my values within my life. Now, for many years, I would have to personally say there was a lack of trust, not only with those people, places outside of myself, but unfortunately, the self-trust. Now, this was from my growing up. I've talked about my story, being able to just like give you a little bit of a taste of that. But, as children, my brother and I, we never really had trust in those that were looking after us. Now, those delicate ages, we were moved around. We had no stability. We had no security. And, when we feel that insecure within our life and don't have that foundation, it is really easy to lose trust in those that may have been, looking after or caretakers within your life. So as I went through adolescence, into my adulthood even, it really did affect, I would say, the relationships that I was in as well. Not being able to trust certain people because of those abandonment issues, but also that, idea that we may be betrayed once again. It really lingered in the back of my mind. And until I did my deeper inner journey work and found security within my own being, I was able to really not only practice it, but build trust within my life. Now, we're going to be talking about a lot of deep stuff tonight. And, one thing for me, like I said, that does sit at the top of the totem pole is that self-trust. Why it really sits at the top for me is because it really builds two things within each and all of our lives. Once you have that self-trust, not only navigate, with those people around you, but also be able to pursue and action some of those goals and intentions within your life. And those two things for me, my brothers and sisters, once you've built this self-trust into your armor, is resilience and confidence. So no matter what happens within your life, whether it's a relationship breakup, whether you've had a career finance downturn, or whether your health's in jeopardy, you can back yourself. You can trust yourself. And with that undeniable trust brings confidence. The confidence that allows you the ability to be able to overcome some of these challenges, like I said, within our daily lives. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to diving in deep tonight, brothers. Let's go in. What are we thinking, my brother Dan? Let's call you up, birthday boy.
Yeah, sure. Well, this is a topic, close to home. It's a season of healing that I'm going through, which is really like learning to trust myself on a really deeper level. And this is a wound that I accumulated when I was a kid. When I was young, had a very enmeshed and codependent relationship with my mother. And then around the age of 6, 7 years old, she left my father for another man. And that created a huge abandonment and rejection wound within me. But what it also created, which is where I'm at now, is I had all of these feelings of, as you said, stability, security, and they were all within her, obviously a parent. When we're young, this is what we do. We put all of that to our parents, all of that safety, security. So when something like this happens, it can cause a big amount of instability and insecurity. And for me, where that really showed up for me personally was the lack of trust within my own feelings, because I really thought she was here as my mother in this life. She was here for the long run. I had all of these feelings inside of me that, I thought going back to a 6-year-old mind, I thought she loved me, and I thought she was going to be here. I thought she was supposed to be my guide. And then all of a sudden one day, poof, she's gone. And I learned at an age of 6 that I can't trust my feelings, that what I feel might not be true. So if she can leave, if she's my everything, then how can I trust anything else that I'm experiencing in life? And where I'm at with my own healing journey is this wound is opening up, and I'm finally getting into this part and meeting it with love. And that's always the answer, is obviously meet everything with love and openness, with an open heart. But man, it's challenging because everything inside of me is telling me I can't trust that. I can't trust those feelings. And this shows up in all over across my life, in every way, because I have feelings obviously about all different things. And that makes it really challenging, because one minute I'm like, oh, I feel something, this must be it. And then the next minute a program will come in and be like, I can't trust that. I don't know if that's what I'm actually feeling or not. And so it's been really challenging to enter this phase where I'm really having to dig deep within my own heart and find out, okay, this is me, this is my heart, this is feeling, and I can trust that. Why? Because it's always there. My heart is always there, because that's the center.
Beautiful.
Magic. What are you picking up, Daz?
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I can just basically piggyback, or I can identify with each of your sentiments, because I've just come to realize that's just a human element, a human part of our existence, is that we come into this world not really understanding what's ahead of us as kids, as children. And it's not only until we become adults that we begin to have to deal with the issues and ramifications of these experiences. And I've had them. I mean, I remember, just growing up, and as a child, and you're innocent. You just take everything as its face value, and if they say this is it, and this is then that's it, or if that's this over there, and that's you just take it as fact, as truth, as you trust that, not knowing any better, or how to actually evaluate information, whether it's internally or externally. You're just not at that place yet. So I think it wasn't until, like, I'm a teenager and I started to see the experiences in my life and my family and the surrounding uh, community. For me, it was just, I started to like, something's off. But again, I'm just too young to try to understand what was off, until I become older and got into life, into the military, and started doing adult things. And uh, that's when the the triggers, the emotional issues, the moodiness, a lot of the not knowing what to trust, who to trust, um, started to develop for me. And it took decades for me to start to understand, and how to detect, how to get the feedback, so that I can understand what to trust or who to trust, and then further down the line, how to trust. And it came right down to, as I gotten older, that I had to learn how to free myself from trusting my exterior uh, circumstances, and learn how to find that security within myself. Try to find if in fact I am actually valuable, worthy of actually trusting myself. I went through these processes of trying to discover myself, trying to understand who I am and what I am, and that's when things started to kind of shift. It was challenging because it's not something that you really are taught. It's just something that when you're going through these experiences, especially as a male in this Western society, uh, I'm sure pretty much is something that we all males are going through, all males are dealing with, and trying to find ways to be able to deal with it in a very productive and constructive way. I think that's so important, and being able to identify that the power within yourself is really paramount.
Yeah, yeah. Appreciate all that you've shared so far tonight. I think we got ourselves a show. I want to drop in just a few thoughts that struck me this morning as I was in flow by myself in a wilderness. Um, we talk about trusting of self, and we talk about trusting of others, and how we're impacted by our youth and our younger years, and the wounds that surface up in our adult life, and we tend to focus on the emotional or the mental, but there's other parts of our life experiences that we carry within as well that relate to our physical as well as sexual and perhaps even spiritual. And so it's not just one, it's all I call it the five pillars of life. And if any one of them are out of balance within us because we have been impacted by our life experiences that include traumas or pivotal moments, we're carrying this breach of trust within. I had an example today I want to share. As I decided to go out into the wilderness by myself, and I something just brought me to the intention of doing a free solo, climbing the mountain as high as I can go without putting my total life at risk. I went pretty high. I went the highest I've ever been on this particular mountain. And as I was navigating all types of terrain, sometimes using all fours, hands and feet, using my spider shoes, and as I like to call them now, my Spider-Man shoes, I realized that there were moments where I went into lack of trust. I wasn't trusting myself. I wasn't trusting, could I do this? Am I going to fall? Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to get injured? Am I going to drop 50 or 100 feet? Am I going to potentially get killed? And what I realized in that moment, that this is also a big part of the trust wound around fear of getting hurt. And then trusting, do I have what it takes? Do I have the ability to navigate through those moments? I spent, I think, close to 5 hours out there today. And through that whole experience, I gave myself permission to feel the emotions, feel the feelings, identify which part of myself was even not trusting. Was I safe or was I unsafe? And each time I went there, I had no doubt it was my younger self, the boy within. That younger self, it could have been a teenager, I could have been 5 or 6 year old, but I was definitely working through those moments of lack of self-trust. And here's what ended up unfolding for me. At any time I went to self-doubt, self-trust that I could do it, or I had the capacity to do it, or did I have the right gear, which I really didn't on this day. I just took a really cautious approach. I took my time. I didn't put pressure on myself. And I just honored those feelings, as Danny talked about. I honored them, but I didn't allow myself to get hijacked by them. Instead, I showed up. I showed up as my adult higher self. I held myself. I sang. I raised my arms. I did some amazing mantras out there. Forget about psychedelics. I didn't need any psychedelics today. I had all my needs met in the wilderness in the beautiful red rocks. They don't consider this particular mountain one of a vortex energy, but I'll tell you what, that energy was surrounding me. It was within me. It was flowing through me. I was vibrating. I was just in it. And anytime that part of me that went to self-trust, self-doubt, self-fear, I honored that. I didn't dismiss it. I honored it, but I didn't allow it to take me out either. I showed up and I stepped further, and sometimes I pivoted, I changed direction, I assessed, but I stayed with it. And what was beautiful was when I got to the highest point that I felt physically safe to go without fear. That was just making a smart, healthy choice for myself. In that moment, all my needs were met. I was at peace, and I actually did some significant healing for the part of me that was a very scared young boy, a very scared teenager, and a very, very unsafe adult as well. Always having that backdraft of fear within. And so I'm going to ask you, Ev, to share with me and the guys here. What do you make of what I just shared?
Yeah, it's beautiful, brother. And there's quite a few things that you've mentioned. Obviously, that inner child coming through, where a lot of those beliefs, wrapped around the fears that we may take on, we carry on, and we carry on particularly from those beliefs that were passed down to us.
Yep.
Because as we know, in that sacral space, it's really our dependence on self in relation to others. But as we get up into that solar plexus, where we're finding how we feel in relation to yourself, as opposed to those people, places, things outside of yourself. So your solar, my brothers and sisters, is really the passage. It's really the bridge to get you back to the heart space. When we get back to this heart space, as we know, man, there's many things that are taught through heart space. One of those big things is trust. Trust thyself. When you talk about the fear, Mr. Hoffman, it's not something that just happened when you're up on that red rock and that you overcome. It's something that you've had to build through time. I've heard your story many a times, brother, and I love hearing it. You think about the trust that you had to build when you were sitting on that hospital bed, man. You think about the trust that you have to build when you're going through some of these relationships that I've talked about at the intro. So we build this trust, self-trust over time. And I'm sure from what you're saying as well, my brother, what we've got to really understand and understand that I had to learn from an early age, brothers and sisters. People talk about they learn lessons later on in life. Mate, I was born into the world learning lessons. When I knew that I had to trust in thyself for my own emotional fulfillment, then I was able to build up my own self-esteem, that value, that worth, which builds the confidence, which makes you what? Trustworthy. So this has nothing to do with anyone or anything on the outside, my brothers and sisters. So this undeniable self-trust that we build in self, then you can start tapping into the divine trust. Now, some may call it faith. I call it looking, with my ancestors behind my back all the time. Once I turned to that trust and I was led, not by logic, but my GPS system, the intuition of my gut, I knew that I was always going to be looked after, my brothers and sisters. And that was undeniably self-trust.
Yeah, I would definitely say that knowing that is that's when we truly arrive at trust, is when we find that knowing. Because if you know, there's no doubt, Yep. Absolutely. If you find it within your own self and your own gut, you get that intuitive hit. Oh, no, I know. And when we get there, that's when the trust arrives. And this is something I'd love to touch on, is this whole idea of building trust. And when we do want to build trust. But what I found is when I'm trying to build trust and there's a part of me that doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel secure, I can't build anything. I can't build anything on shaky ground. And so it's always about doing the deep inner work and finding, well, where don't I trust and why don't I trust? As I shared earlier, like for me, it's, well, I don't trust my feelings because there's a wound around not trusting that my safety and security is always going to be there. So let me go within myself. Let me do the deep inner work and find the energy that doesn't trust. Once I find the energy that doesn't trust and I heal the wounds that are in there, that are still scared, that are still in fear, as you were mentioning, Jay, that little boy that that's in there that's still scared. Once we heal that, then the trust we can actually become. It's one of the 20 universal ways of oneness that my mentor, Rachel Fiore, has brought to this world. It's all about the way of trust, and we must become that. And there's that building of trust that, from what I found, I can't build the trust if I've still got parts of me that don't trust. So let me heal them first. Let me do the deep transformational work, and then I can become all the trust that I am.
Beautiful. I love that. Danny, Daz, before you jump in, I just want to piggyback on both what Ev and Danny reflected on my share, which is that at one point in my free solo experience today, I actually tapped into this truth, my subjective truth, that is, Daz, but it's a truth of mine, is that so often what we're carrying in lack of trust and fear around all of that is not even ours. It's what's been programmed into us by our ancestors. For me, I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. But, you know, my fear, what I did was I actually gave them back their fear today. I gave both my mother and my father back their fears today when I was free soloing in that mountain. And it was intense at times. It was really intense. There was no one out there but me, the land, the sky, the earth, and divine source. And I absolutely leaned into faith and trust in those moments. But I had the awareness that so much of the fear that not only do I carry, but we all carry as beings having this human experience, it's not even ours. That lack of trust comes from the programming that we get at home, at school, on a playground, perhaps in our religious faith. But at the end of the day, it's an opportunity to really look, explore, uncover, and discover, is it even yours? And if it's not yours, why do we continue to carry it? As soon as we have that awareness, we can alchemize the energy of it, release it, get rid of it, get it out, cut the cords, break the chain. It's time for us to show up and stop living in lack of having the courage to show up and do the things that we think we want to do, but we're scared to do it. Why? Because we don't trust that we're gonna fail, or we don't trust that we're gonna feel like we let people down. And let me let you in on a little secret. You know, Don Miguel Ruiz from the Four Agreements talks about that in his book a little bit there. The secret is that it doesn't matter what other people think. The only thing that matters is how you feel. And then alchemize those feelings, release them, heal them, so that you can climb mountains that you didn't think you ever had the ability to do in your lifetime. And I was one of those people. So, Daz, what are you making of all that right here, right now?
Well, I totally understand what is being shared, and I agree with Danny with regards to there's one thing to have these experiences, but there's another thing to try to identify and understand the purpose of these experiences. We got to understand why we're having them. We got to understand what's going on. We got to understand where it's coming from. We got to understand how to address this. And you kind of hit on it a little bit, Jay, with regards to you freeing up this this burden that you had, and you're giving it back. So, in other words, there's lessons to be learned when we're having these issues, particularly earlier relationships with our caretakers. So, in other words, if you're not learning the lesson, you're not going to move anywhere. So, we can trust and have faith and believe, but just as Danny says, if you don't know this, if you haven't learned the lesson, if you have not done the inner work, if you have not done the type of mindfulness that is necessary to get to trust you, And I'm saying to trust you, particularly because we are always constantly operating in a manner that is not really us. So the lesson in all of our experiences when we're going through this thing called life and we're having these challenges, particularly with our emotions, our actions and reactions to these emotions. And we're realizing, as Jay eloquently put it here, realize that this is his parents' fear. Well, that's something that we need to know and not just feel. Because feeling our issues is one thing. That's just an indication that there's an issue. But the next step is to try to engage these issues and try to understand why we're having them, what's causing them, what's the triggers, what's the catalyst, and then moving on to healing, which is, as we've been saying it, the healing is recognizing this is not yours to take on. It's not yours to carry. And for you to be free to be able to get to that next level of mountain climbing, you have to learn the path and the lesson that you need to take in order to get to that next round. So, spirituality, in its essence, is really about learning the lessons of how to make yourself whole. But you can't make yourself whole unless you realize that there's an issue. And if you don't understand what the issue is, that's going to be challenging. You really got to come to that place where it's like, hey, there's an issue. And this is where I think that the objective truth plays a huge part, because that allows me to look outside of myself. And when I say look outside of myself, I'm actually saying looking inward to myself. Am I being actually honest? Am I being authentic? Am I being, if am I holding myself to a healthy integrity that I can discover the things that needs to be healed and the lessons. I shared with my mentor just today. One of the things I've been experiencing in the last few years is that what I'm expediting or manifesting on the exterior is directly related to my ability to learn my lesson in present time. Because I remember there was a time when it took months, sometimes years, for me to learn to identify what these emotional issues were with me. And you can't move on until you've learned that lesson. It will keep recycling through your experiences and relationships until I've gotten to that place now in the last few years where I can identify these triggers, these projections, these mirrors almost in real time, and I can manage my responses and actions to the degree where it's healthy because I'm learning the lesson in real time. That allows me to free all the manifestations and the possibilities of relationships and all the exterior desires and wants that I have. So to me, learning those lessons is key to be able to make this progress that we desire to have in our lives.
Beautiful. I love that, Dad. Evans did a pre-show video from the road as he was coming in from whatever land you were coming in from, and he talked a little bit about how our relationship with the word mistakes. Ev, I want to invite you to share a little bit about, from your perspective. We talk about mistakes a lot, the mistakes that we make, and that word. What do you think of that word, and what's your relationship with mistakes in your life today, Ev?
Yeah, man. Well, look, like I've mentioned before, I was groomed into be a higher performer, man. Whether it was at school, whether it was through sport, the benchmark was always set high. The bar was always set high for me. So, I never wanted to make a mistake. I felt the pressure to always succeed, so to speak. And until I realized that particular programming wrapped around whether there was a mistake or failure within my life was definitely not my own. It was another generational program that was passed down. But I became aware of it. And what we're talking about here, talking about that emotional intelligence, once again, being aware of these emotions, being able to identify some of these emotions when they come up in our life, if something's gone wrong or we felt like we've made a mistake. But when I started to realize what emotions were coming up wrapped around some of those particular things or outcomes or circumstances that weren't going my way, I realized that they were just exactly what you say, Mr. Rothman. These were just missteps. They were missteps off my path, the path that I'd aligned to my values, to my purpose, to my soul plan. So identifying and becoming aware of these emotions is key. But then being able to replace, think about some of these thoughts that are coming up in our daily life, even if we don't overcome, a so-called mistake or misstep in our daily life. Think about the shit we then talk to ourselves, running ourselves into the ground, whether we've made a so-called mistake. So what I started to realize, my brothers and sisters, that as a human being, none of us are perfect. Mum, dad, caretakers, coaches, uncles, aunties, whoever looked after you, none of us are perfect. When you take the tension off that strain and release some of that particular pressure that is poured down to you from so-called mistakes within our lives, then you actually start to see everything more as a less than. You stop feeling less than. You actually move on with your life and you use these missteps as growth, as expansion, rather this contraction that doesn't allow us to, like I always say, man, live our soul plan.
There you go. I love that. I want to just welcome Rachel Fiore. I think Denny knows who Rachel is. She says mistakes are simply a form of learning for us. They enhance growth. And I'll just piggyback that. Well, Danny, since I brought Rachel in, just to say a quick hi, Rachel's been a guest on Real Men Real Talk Live. I think I've lost track. It's 5 or 6 times. Maybe someone's keeping score. I'm not, because it's not about winning or losing. It's about we show up right on time, divine time. And I look forward to the next visit when Rachel joins us on a podcast. Maybe one of these days we'll have Danny and Rachel together, the powerhouse team. But in any event, Danny, what are you making of all where we're going with this tonight? And as it relates to this place where you're in right now, because you're in the thick of it right now, as you acknowledge it in your opening moments here on a podcast tonight. What are you making of?
Well, obviously, whenever you're speaking about mistakes and the perfectionism program, this is something that I've run a lot. We're talking about judgment and shame. And the way that we judge and shame ourselves is really something that we can kind of see that, oh, we're carrying this. This is from my parents. But to what we were speaking about earlier, it's like we can't always just give everything back. Because, I mean, the wound that I shared at the beginning, it's my wound. I've got to be responsible for healing that because it happened to me when I was a kid. I can't give that back. It's mine. It's my responsibility. And so to always come back, that's the first way of oneness is, oh, this is mine because it's showing up in my life right now. So let me heal it. But then obviously it's nuanced. There is parts of us that, we've taken on. I have done this for myself with the perfectionism program, constantly holding myself to a very high standard. And when I do that and I don't achieve the perfection that doesn't exist, I then shame and judge myself. I bring myself down, as you mentioned, Evers, like I make myself less than because I'm not perfect. And that's a very difficult place to live. But when we learn to alchemize the pain, to transform it within our own heart, that's when those lessons the mistakes can actually turn into lessons, because we're now not trapping ourselves with the low vibration of shame or judgment or feeling inferior. So that's how I found to free myself from the mistakes that I have made and will continue to make, because nobody is perfect. Even while you're doing all of this deep work and you're healing, you're still going to make mistakes. We're just human. But the difference is do I take responsibility for them? Do I take accountability, and then do I love myself when that happens? Am I choosing to repeat the same patterns and programs that my parents gave me and shame and judge? Or am I choosing to open my heart and to love myself and to actually grow myself up through that love rather than repeating those same mistakes?
Well, I'm gonna bring you back to reality here, because what you just shared was absolutely beautiful. But I don't know too many men in mainstream, at least this country, that would be able to express what you just expressed. You're clearly on a beautiful path, and I love everything you said, and I'm in total alignment with it. But if you're the average guy showing up in this country, they're not going to understand a damn thing you just said.
Well, hopefully they did.
How do we get the average man who's so walled off from his heart to open his heart, to be able to alchemize, to be able to heal, to be able to identify what wounds are theirs and what wounds are not theirs, and then how to embrace it and what to do with it? How do we reach the men that are showing up in a toxic masculine energy, and they're causing more grave harm in all of their relationships? But the most important one is with themselves. Who wants to take a jump at that? Danny, you're welcome to jump on that, or any one of you beautiful souls right here, right now.
We do what we're doing right now and be the change
Yeah.
and talk about it.
Yeah, there's nothing we could do about what the collective masses are doing individually in their lives. There's absolutely nothing we could do about that, except what we do with our individual lives is to show up. You know, the hero or the savior mantra is not a good one. It's not. It's dead. It's unhealthy. You have to save yourself, and I liked how Danny put it. It's it's challenging. It's difficult to own something that you believe is not yours. You know, and it seems like the only reason why you don't, or a person may not feel that it's not theirs, is because they don't understand the purpose for the womb. They don't understand the purpose of them being here on this earth, and having an opportunity to live life and to experience life in this manner. It's because they're caught up into their own ego consciousness, and they're only interested in whatever persona they are actively engaging in at that particular time. These individuals are not interested in the type of work that we're here talking about, which is the road to self-discovery, the road to healing, the road to wholeness. And in order to be able to do that, you have to be able to integrate parts of you that you are not aware of. Jay mentioned the word, Danny mentioned the word, and the word is alchemy. And I think if we really dig, do an etymology about this word, alchemy is really about revealing that which is not known. And I've been saying this for a minute now. The key is to be able to reveal the things that are not conscious to us to our consciousness. That is true alchemy. To be able to bring the things that are not seen, not understood, not manifested, and to bring them into manifestation, bring them into consciousness. And we are beings that we have the makeup. We have the physiological makeup, we have the biological makeup, and we have the spiritual makeup to be able to do this. But we're so fragmented in our mindset that we never take in consideration that we are responsible for the mess that we see ourselves in on a daily basis. And that kind of fragmented ego will never want to. As a matter of fact, that's the way the shadow is created. The shadow is created from the ego pushing down or pushing away those things that either I or society deems as not necessary, not likable, not valuable, not authentic, or whatever. And this is the kind of work that we need to do. And only, I guess men like us, uh, who are truly understanding that the need for healthy masculinity is going to actually save our communities. I guess this is why we take it seriously. This is why I take it seriously, because everything else is just talk. We have to be able to do the work. And as Danny have said, and Ev said, and others have said, the shadow work is probably the most important work that a man could do in terms of healing himself and healing his community and his family.
Beautiful.
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 I just
Well,
want to
go ahead.
And you can trust that.
That is a must.
Ev, go ahead. What were you going to say, Ev?
I just want to share just a little bit how some of our brothers, you mentioned, how some of our brothers in the so-called, let's say 3D could really, start even on that sort of navigation. Like we've got to start, because I help a lot of these brothers, okay? And I don't like to dive in too deep and, talk about that inner journey straight away and going into the shadow on that, because that can be quite, confronting for a lot of these brothers. We've got to learn to speak their language. Now, the language still of this 3D that we're all living in, we're jumping bridges, 3D, 5D, through the 4D. But we've got to understand some of the words that are used, particularly with these brothers. What I mentioned on the video I done this morning was a sense of predictability. Now, we came out of a time only a few years back, brothers and sisters, don't forget what we came out of, where we were in unpredictability, where a lot of brothers, sisters as well, were going through the unknown and quite uncertain with each of all their lives. How were they going to pay for the food on the table for families, the roof to go over their heads? When we start to build a little bit of predictability within our life, we actually start to become in a little bit more of the known space. Now, this for many of these brothers, going back to what the question was asked, builds a sense of control. Now, that could be a harsh word to hear for some people, man, but I'm going to say it. Because a lot of these brothers like to still know that they at least have control of their own lives. Now, like I mentioned earlier, when we're able to build this sense of predictability within our life, we actually become reliable, which gives us the ability to be relying not on anybody else or anything outside of ourselves, but only ourselves. So this depends on whether you've been able to build that trust, which gives you that dependability within your own life. And then, like as Brother Denny was talking about, we can keep ourselves in the accountability. So those sort of words actually resonate with a lot of these brothers. Because when I tell them that, when we release this letting go of controlling the outside world, but what you can control is how you react or respond to it, that actually gives them a sense of control. That actually gives them a sense of the known. That actually gives them a sense of the predictable. So when we're able to have that sense of predictability, it gives us more an emotional stability within our life. So how that looks for some of these brothers, it can look like, within their careers, like I said, it can look like in relationships or can look like in health. But there's got to be a sense of predictability to allow these brothers to understand.
I'd love to address that question as well, if you don't mind, guys. I trust the universe, right? It's trust that the message will get to those who need to hear, and that the universe will bring the lessons to every man that isn't quite ready to hear the calling, and that they'll get triggered, and the universe will bring them lessons to wake them up, so they reach a level where they can hear what I'm saying.
There you go.
And that's okay. You know, it's to trust my own heart and to trust my own journey. And if people aren't ready to hear what I have to say, that's okay. That's okay. I trust that the universe will awaken everybody at the right time and put my faith there, as it were.
Yeah, that's beautiful what you just shared, Danny. It's interesting because I do a lot of work with individuals that come to Sedona for a soul retreat to do some deep healing work, as what you've referred to tonight. And a very common experience is at the back end when they're feeling high and they're feeling inspired and hopeful for their future. They want to rush home. They want to get home and share it with all the people that they love, their children, their spouses, their parents, their siblings, and their friends. And it potentially is a setup for disappointment, because as we have all, you know where I'm going with this, Daz, as we've all learned, we want to inspire the people we care most about. But here's the truth, is what Danny just was alluding to, is we all have a different threshold for pain. And until we hit that threshold for pain, it doesn't matter if you could be the best speaker in the universe, but they're not going to hear you. They're going to hear yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. They're not going to receive it here until they're in so much pain. It could be emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual pain, that they will then surrender and say, okay, my best thinking landed me right here, right now. What do I do now? Now, I'm not speaking from theory. I'm speaking from my own reality. That was me when I was 54 years old. It took me that long to hit that threshold for pain for me, which was death at my doorstep. For others, I know other men in my life that they didn't have to hit that threshold for pain. Their threshold for pain was at about a 6 or a 7, and they were done living in pain, emotional pain, relationship pain. And they come in seeking surrender and clarity on how to change the trajectory of their own life. So, Danny, I'm with you all the way. You know, it really comes down to we have no control over other people's thresholds for pain and how and when they've had enough. And for some people, it's not going to be in this lifetime. They're gonna transition in pain. And what do we get to do is just really live in what I call acceptance, patience, and trust. And for me, the trust is about understanding that for some of us, it's not going to happen in this lifetime. And we just get to accept and love them right where they're at, with healthy boundaries in place, though, right?
If anybody has been on this journey for a minute, they'll soon find out this is not a race for the swift.
Say that again. It's not a race for the what?
For the swift. Or, you know, the what's the term that we instant gratification. Nah.
It's a marathon.
No. And and that's the challenge. That's the challenge, to surrender to the universal, natural, divine guidance. It will determine what lessons you need and what lessons you don't need, and where you need to, take that path. It determines that. And there's too oftentimes that's the problem with the healing process. We're getting in the way all the time instead of just surrendering to the process. However long it takes for you to learn these lessons, that's the time it's going to take.
Well, here's the thing, Daz, is the part of us that gets impatient. It's not our adult self. If we were to practice or reach for one of the questions that I share, one of the principles I share in my teachings is, it's how old am I feeling right now? As soon as we get irritable, discontent, and lacking patience, there's a really good chance that it's not you as a 40 or 30 or 50 or 60-year-old self. It's your younger self that's lacking the patience.
Yeah, but as Danny says, yeah, we understand that. But you're a 50-year-old man, and you should act accordingly. That's what healing is about. Healing is recognizing that and taking accountability through self-love, forgiveness, and then act accordingly. That's a healed man.
Beautiful.
Not to continue into the 6-year-old behavior. There's no healing there.
As you heard me say before, it's simple, not easy. And on that note, we got about 6 minutes to we're at the hour, so I want to give each one of you a minute and a half to put a pretty bow on a show and call it a wrap. Why don't you, each one of you share? Dana, we'll start with you. Share some closing thoughts coming off of tonight's episode, which is trust is a must as you are navigating through this moment of denseness, perhaps within yourself.
Yeah, it's been a difficult week, and especially, you're coming in, there's the expectation of the mind, oh, it's going to be your birthday, it's going to be amazing, and then the universe, as we've all eloquently put, brings those beautiful lessons for you to look at, and what a perfect time to do the work, eh? But yeah, I've really enjoyed jumping on here and talking about trust, and I just encourage anybody out there, if they are struggling with any amount of trusting self, trusting other people, it's most likely that there is wounding there that needs your love. There's a part of you that's crying out, that wants your attention, that needs healing, needs integrating, and needs maturing. So I encourage anybody out there to really do the deep inner work to find the right guide for them, whatever that might be, so they can transform themselves, which in turn transforms everybody, because we are the collective. So this is an invitation to everyone. Keep going if you're on the path, and if you're not started, now's a perfect time.
Beautiful. Thank you, Danny, for that. Daz, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that. And this is my third round, and this was really enjoyable tonight. I hold these topics dear and close to me, because I've seen what it has done for me in terms of transforming my life, and I've seen how it's transformed others' lives. So yeah, if you are on this path, stay patient. It's not about the destination; it's the journey and learning the lessons as we're going along. And as you've heard tonight, self-healing is about self-love and accountability and learning the lessons. It's challenging. We know it's challenging, but keep the faith. Keep the strength up. Continue to believe in yourself. Continue to know and understand that this is your growth opportunity. It may seem like life sometimes are against you, or you're not feeling that you're benefiting. But if you really look internally and try to understand why these things are going on, you can come up with some pretty cool information, and make the corrective actions in your life, and you'll begin to see and soon turn your life around. And so, yeah, it could be a little discouraging, and like Jay says, it's easy. Um, it's simple but not easy. Um, but it's not supposed to be. But it's definitely worth it and liberating.
Beautiful. Thank you, Daz. Ev, you're up, man.
Yeah, brothers.
Take us out of the ballpark tonight.
Thanks for coming on, my brothers, and much love to all our brothers and sisters that have tuned in. Wherever you get the broadcast, you're always in divine time, as we know. But, for many years, like I mentioned at the start of the show, man, I didn't trust much. I didn't even trust myself, to the point I was making, pretty poor decisions, toxic choices, people I was hanging out with, toxic behaviors that I was enduring in. I really didn't trust myself, and I had to build that over time. Building the trust for me, like I said, in time will build that resilience within your life, giving you that sense of predictability, that that you can back yourself, brothers and sisters. That you can turn to yourself when you come up into these obstacles or challenges. But it's going to come with time as we come back to this heart space to open it. So, like the brothers have said all night, once we're able to identify some of these core wounds, be able to release some of this trauma, some of this baggage, some of this stuff that we've been carrying within our lives, then we can start practicing some of these areas within our life to actually build this self-trust. Now, for me, it was just sitting with myself to start off with, my brothers and sisters. We're thinking hundreds and hundreds of thoughts a day. When we can sit with these thoughts and actually become more honest with what's coming up in our daily life, then we can actually start to do that mental laundry like I always talk about. Then we can start noticing and start understanding some of the self-talk that may be causing some of the fear or the self-doubt within our lives. We actually start building trust through being able to talk much more better, much more positive sort of words within our lives, as we've always talked about. But one thing that I always teach, and I'll finish up here, my brothers and sisters, is that on my Rainbow Serpent dreaming, when you have actually come through the passage of the gate of the heart and you work your way into the higher realms of the spirit, when you get up into the crown or the sense of knowing, I was always shown and taught that there was always one little light center that used to sit in the back as well. And that particular starlight wheel to me means that you've become a self-sustainable being. You don't depend on anyone else for your emotional fulfillment anymore. You don't need no dependence on anyone else to fulfill anything within your life. You actually become independent. When we start to learn the nature of universe, that it's forever changing, that anyone can leave us at any time, nothing is guaranteed, my brothers and sisters, you can then practice and honoring even that time, like I mentioned, of sitting alone. I mean, we talked about it last week, loneliness and the difference between that and being alone. Because when I started to spend that time in solitude and sitting with my own thoughts, doing the mental laundry and replacing it, transmuting it with some things that would actually allow me to walk within my soul plan and my purpose, that independence, my brothers and sisters, gives not only a sense of self-trust, but it gives you a free mind. And to me, my brothers and sisters, when you've been able to free yourself of all of those things and learn from those lessons as we keep ascending into these higher frequencies, that allows us to live out this soul plan, your purpose, your goals, and your wildest dreams. So on that note, my brothers and sisters, have a lit weekend. It's been an absolute pleasure, brothers. Thanks for joining in once again.
Same here.
Thank you. Thank you, Ev. I just want to take a moment here. I'll keep it as brief as I'm able to in a moment. I'd say my biggest takeaway from our time together this evening is when we get out of our head and get into our heart, that is where all the liquid gold is. It's where it's all at. The head is the logical thinking. The logical thinking is what gets us into most of our trouble because it becomes illogical over time. But when we have the courage to step in to our heart and really tap into what we're feeling, honor our feelings, reveal our feelings, we can heal. We have the capacity to do it. We just have to have the courage to show up. And the days of chasing relationships, thinking that this next one is going to be the one that's going to bring me home, and then they let you down, and then they're actually affirming one of your core wounds. They're validating that everyone in your life is not trustworthy. And there's your mirror. And the mirror is that perhaps it's time to take a look within you. Are you trustworthy with yourself? How are you talking to yourself? How are you feeding yourself? How are you speaking to yourself? And if you're not showing up for yourself, it's no one's fault. It's an opportunity to ask the question, why not? What's it going to take? And when you uncover and discover your answer, you can live a life that you never imagined was possible in this lifetime. I only can say it because that was my story. And with that, I want to thank you guys, each one of my brothers here, Everest, Jazz, and Danny. You guys are amazing. I love you guys. You guys just showed up right on time tonight. I enjoyed the show tonight. I hope our viewers, you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you heard something that inspired you, brought you some hope in your life, please share it out with your friends and family. And maybe even listen to the episode for a second time, because sometimes the mind drifts into the vast sea and we miss what we need to hear. So in any event, I love you guys. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Next week, I anticipate having Josh back and Jeff back in the studio. We'll see you next week. Have a beautiful weekend. We love you. Thanks for joining us tonight on Real Men, Real Talk.